Let's go. I got a vision I see in my head, a melody buried deep into my soul. They call us crazy, we cutting the edge, unlocking the future and letting it go. This is a calling that's higher. The time we decided our stories are gonna be told. This is where legends are born. We paving the road, a future that favors the bold. Break the rules, break the laws. This is the moment we change it all. Break the rules, break the laws. This is the moment we change it all. Yeah, greatness. Yeah, it feels like greatness. Woo! Greatness. Yeah, it feels like greatness. Legendary in the making. Reach out and we take it. Not to emerge, we on the verge, and it feels like greatness. Something coming, I can feel it. Deep down in my spirit. Revolution, it's a new day. Time to redefine the limits. So vivid, I can see it. So loud, I can hear it. So they calling me a madman, but the future belongs to the fearless. Break the rules, break the laws. This is the moment we change it all. Break the rules, break the laws. This is the moment we change it all. Yeah, greatness. Yeah, it feels like greatness. Woo! Greatness. Yeah, it feels like greatness. Legendary in the making. Reach out and we take it. Not to emerge, we on the verge, and it feels like greatness. Greatness. Yeah, it feels like greatness. Woo! Greatness. Yeah, it feels like greatness. Legendary in the making. Reach out and we take it. Not to emerge, we on the verge, and it feels like greatness. This is the truth, into the light. Taking our dreams and we bring them to life. This is the truth, into the light. Taking our dreams and we bring them to life. Yeah, greatness. Yeah, it feels like greatness. Woo! Greatness. Yeah, it feels like greatness. Legendary in the making. Reach out and we take it. Not to emerge, we on the verge, and it feels like greatness. We about to set the tone. We about to write the code. Yeah, we writing the code. Yeah. We on a new elevation. We came here to shatter the mold. We gon' shatter the mold. Yeah. We about to set the tone. We about to write the code. Yeah, we writing the code. Yeah. We on a new elevation. We came here to shatter the mold. Yeah. I know you hear it. I know you see it. We are the fearless. We are the genius. We are defiance. We are the beacons. We are the true believers. Yeah. Greatness. Yeah, it feels like greatness. Woo! Greatness, yeah, it feels like greatness. Legendary in the making. Reach out and we take it. Not to emerge, we on the verge, and it feels like greatness. Yeah. Woo. Greatness.
Red alert, John, shine a light down. On the front lines of my mind now.
you smell what The Rock is cooking? The Rock says, The Rock says, The Rock says, The Rock.
I hear voices in my head, they counsel me, they understand, they talk to me. You got your rules and your religion, all designed to keep you safe. But when rules start getting broken, you start questioning your faith. I have a voice that is my savior, hates to love and loves to hate. I have a voice that has the knowledge and the power to your fate. I hear voices crying, I see heroes dying, I taste blood that's trying, I feel tension rising. I hear voices in my head, they counsel me, they understand, they talk to me, they talk to me, they tell me things that I...
And now, Snickers presents the greatest live event in entertainment. Wrestlemania.
Hello and welcome to the WWE Wrestling Talk Show with Lisa Rock Jones and
Sean Rodney Smith as we bring you our pre-show to the most stupendous two-night event in WrestleMania history, WrestleMania 38, which will come at you on Saturday, April 2nd and Sunday, April 3rd from the AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas.
yes, for the first time in 6 years, WWE returns to the AT&T Stadium for WrestleMania and as just stated, for the third year in a row and what is likely going to continue to be the trend, WrestleMania comes at us in two separate nights. Now, I will side note to this before we go through what's on each night. At the time of this recording, we still have one episode of SmackDown left. So there is a chance that a few things could possibly be switched around.
There's a chance. We'll keep our ears on that.
So we have 7 matches on both nights. We will start with WrestleMania Saturday, aka tomorrow night.
At the time of this recording.
And this is a message, in my opinion, to the people who say that WWE can't do long-term booking.
Yes.
We have Becky Lynch defending the Raw Women's Championship against Bianca Belair.
This issue dates all the way back to SummerSlam.
Yes. There, Bianca was supposed to defend the SmackDown Women's Championship against Sasha Banks. That then turned into Bianca Belair versus Carmella, which then turned into Bianca Belair versus Becky Lynch when Becky Lynch made her return from maternity leave.
basically squashing Bianca Belair in how many seconds?
Let's not think about that. But yeah, it's handshake, elbow, rock bottom, 1, 2, 3. Now, they did have a rematch at Extreme Rules, but that ended in a count out, I think. Then the draft came up, and they were both drafted to Raw. Of course, had to switch the Raw and SmackDown Women's Championship with the Raw Women's Championship. And they did take a slight break from each other, allowing Becky to work with people like Liv Morgan, Doudrop, and Rita.
But now we're back on the right course.
Yes, because following her unsuccessful attempt at the Royal Rumble, which we will get to in another match, Bianca Belair would then go on to win the Elimination Chamber match in Saudi Arabia to determine who would face Becky Lynch. Then, on the build of it, there was a slight bit of concern when Becky Lynch had voice box issues.
But luckily she recovered just in time to attack Bianca Belair and injure Belair's throat inside the steel chair.
A storyline, I believe. And then, most recently, on this past week's episode of Raw, in what was an attempt, I believe, to not fall victim to the same move that Sasha Banks did last year, Becky Lynch would attempt to cut off Bianca Belair's famous hair.
But that didn't end up well for Miss Lynch. She ended up getting hit with two KODs and having her own hair.
Not fully, but bits of it. The second match on night 1 is a weird tag team match.
It will be the Mysterios of Rey and Dominic against The Miz and, I can't even going to say this, Logan Paul.
Yes, following his small little program with Edge at Day 1 and Royal Rumble, The Miz would go after the Mysterios.
For some random reason.
They would face off in what was the pre-show match in Elimination Chamber. But with Rey Mysterio winning, The Miz would essentially complain that it was a 2-on-1 situation. I would make a phone call.
Yeah.
To find himself a partner. That partner turned out to be Logan Paul.
Who we haven't seen since WrestleMania.
Last year when he was stunned by KO. And we haven't even seen him really do anything physical in the ring apart from a slightly messy looking Skull Crushing finale.
Yeah, a bit messy.
And as if the prospect of this match wasn't bad enough, there is talk that Logan Paul will be sticking around WWE on the creative team.
Yes, that's not a good sign.
And is going to be in one of the DLC package for WWE 2K22.
Oh no, God help me. God help us. No.
Next we have Drew McIntyre versus Happy Corbin.
In what what me and my colleague will suspiciously think will be a squash match.
Possibly not a squash match, but I do think how the mighty have fallen when Drew McIntyre, who last year was in a WWE Championship match, is essentially relegated to a match which is either going to be mid-card or possible filler.
Next, we will move on to a match for the SmackDown Tag Team Championships, as the Usos will put their belts on the line against Shinsuke Nakamura and Rick Boogs.
You may think that this comes out of nowhere, and in a way it kind of does. However, Nakamura and Boogs were attacked from behind by the Bloodline when making their entrance, which then led to a challenge being made. And then I believe the situation was that it was Rick Boogs versus one of the Usos, and if he won, they would get the Tag Team Championship match.
Something like
Speaking of tag team matches,
we have another one that was kind of put out of nowhere, as the New Day of Xavier Woods and Kofi Kingston take on Sheamus and Rich Holland with a certain Butch in their corner.
now, the initial plan for this was likely to be a six-man tag team match featuring Butch actually in the match and Big E. However, Rich Holland made that not happen.
Yeah, because unfortunately Rich Holland dropped Big E on top of his head, breaking his neck.
And for that simple fact, I hope that they lose this match.
Same. I hope so as well.
The sixth match on this card is a rather interesting one, and really dates all the way back to day one.
Seth Rollins will take on a mystery opponent.
Now, initially, the supposed plan was to have Seth Rollins win the WWE Championship at day one and go into WrestleMania as champion. However, due to a certain things were juggled around and changed. Then, after failing to win the championship in the Elimination Chamber, Seth Rollins would spend a few weeks trying to get himself on the WrestleMania card. And finally, after his final attempt failed, he basically said the Raw wouldn't happen until he was given a WrestleMania moment or match, which caused him to be called into WWE headquarters to see Vince McMahon himself. And then it was decided that Seth Rollins will get a WrestleMania match. However, Vince McMahon will announce his opponent on the night of the event whilst Rollins is in the ring.
Rumours have been flying who it could be, with a certain chance of a superstar flying around.
The general feeling is that this is going to be Cody Rhodes, who is supposedly jumping ship from supposedly has signed with WWE after jumping ship from a certain company that must not be named. Our seventh and final match on night one is Charlotte Flair defending the SmackDown Women's Championship against Rowdy Ronda Rousey.
Now, how far back do we go with this issue?
Well-
How far back do we go?
Well, this issue goes all the way back to Survivor Series of 2018, when it was supposed to be Raw Women's Champion versus SmackDown Women's Champion. However, Nia Jax made that not happen by breaking Becky Lynch's nose at the time. So Charlotte was inserted into the match as a substitute. And it was really this night where the crowd essentially turned their backs on Ronda Rousey.
Sending Ronda Rousey down the heel path.
And Rousey was on a long end of a candlestick axe weapon.
Pretty much.
Now after losing the triple threat match at WrestleMania 35, Rousey would leave and start a family. That was until this year's Royal Rumble match.
When she returned and won the Royal Rumble match.
My personal belief, and I say this knowing that this is WWE, but my personal belief is that they would not have gone through the trouble of getting Ronda Rousey to come back if they weren't going to have her win this match.
You do a very strong point there. So that is night one, which will take place on April 2nd.
Yes, that does it for night one of WrestleMania. Oh yes, there is one other thing I forgot to mention.
Stone Cold will be coming to unleash a certain ass whooping on the Kevin Owens show.
Yes, so like Seth Rollins, Kevin Owens has spent a few weeks trying to get on the WrestleMania card, which really culminated in a triple threat match for the Raw Tag Team Championship. And he's been talking trash about Texas for the better part of a couple of months.
Yep.
So, and then he has the balls to call out Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Dumb idea.
Even more dumb than that is actually coming out just as Stone Cold Steve Austin on an episode of Raw. So we will get a KO show featuring Stone Cold Steve Austin. Now there's been a bit of talk and rumours circling around what will close WrestleMania Night 1. Will it be the Charlotte and Ronda match, or possibly the KO segment with Stone Cold?
But only time will tell. On April 2nd. Now, we now officially move over to night 2, which will be on April 3rd.
Yes, the first match is a fatal four-way tag team match for the Women's Tag Team Championship. Now, bear with us here, because this initially started out as a normal tag team match with Queen Zelina and Carmella defending against Banks and Naomi.
Then, for some random reason, WWE decided to add some more women's tag teams into this match with Natalya and Shayna Baszler and Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan.
Well,
Yeah.
they did this a few years ago, remember? That's how Bayley and Sasha lost the titles to begin with.
Very true.
So let's go through this and these two teams. Sasha Banks and Naomi aren't unfamiliar to teaming together because way back in 2015, when Sasha Banks was first called up to the main roster, she was in a little-known team with Naomi called Team Bart.
Yeah, so Sasha and Naomi are no strangers to one another.
However, Sasha Banks has a little bit of a situation here, having never won a WrestleMania match.
No.
Naomi has a bit of success winning the SmackDown Women's Championship and the Women's Battle Royal. Rhea Ripley is 1-1, having lost to Charlotte at Coronemania, aka Mania 36.
And winning the Raw Women's Championship against Asuka before.
And Natalya hasn't really been that active at WrestleMania. And Shayna is again 1-1, having lost to Becky Lynch at Coronemania and successfully defended the Women's Tag Team Championships with Nia Jax last year.
We then move on to our next match, which will be involving our second celebrity involvement, as the star of Jackass, Johnny Knoxville, will take on Sami Zayn in Anything Goes match.
This whole thing really started when Johnny Knoxville declared himself for the men's Royal Rumble match.
And at the time, me and my colleague were both saying WTF.
And then they started smack talking each other on the build to the Royal Rumble. Zayn would be the person to basically chuck Knoxville out of the Rumble. And then this would get a bit even more deeper when Johnny Knoxville would cost Sami Zayn the Intercontinental Championship. Which we are relieved about, because when this match was first made, there was a danger and a possible speculation that it was going to be a Intercontinental Championship match.
Thankfully, Sami Zayn dropped the title to Ricochet to Knoxville. Massive feud.
I really don't see any other option other than having Knoxville win.
Same.
And with Sami Zayn's character being as it is at the moment, with the whole conspiracy thing, I think almost a loss is better for that than a win.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Next we go on to a very interesting match. On the on the March 3rd episode of the Pat McAfee show, which featured Vince McMahon. McMahon stated that he was going to give Pat McAfee a WrestleMania match.
But he didn't specify what.
Then, after this, the guy who is kind of being portrayed as McMahon's pet project in Austin Theory apparently did not take too kindly to this.
No.
Now, the build to this has been a bit of a weird one because a few weeks ago McAfee jumped on Theory after basically being insulted and things like that. And Theory basically goes and whines into McMahon, and then it's said that McAfee cannot touch Theory unless physically provoked, or he loses this match.
Now we move on to a triple threat tag team match for the Raw Tag Team titles as RK Bro of Randy Orton and Riddle put their titles on the line against the Street Profits of and the Dogs of Montez Ford against Alpha Academy of Chad Gable and Otis.
Another possible example of long-term booking. At SummerSlam, RK Bro would win the Raw Tag Team Championships from AJ Styles and Omos. But then in early January, they would lose the titles to Alpha Academy. At this point, I think most fans were expecting Orton to turn on Riddle, thus setting up a one-on-one match between the two at WrestleMania.
But that didn't appear to be the case.
Because a few weeks later, 8 to be precise, in the triple threat match we mentioned a while ago, with which said the teams of RK Bro, Alpha Academy, and Kevin Owens and Seth Rollins, RK Bro would win back the Raw Tag Team titles, and it was then stated that they would go on to defend the titles at WrestleMania. However, it was not specified against who. Then, like a week later, they were challenged by the Street Profits.
Also wanted a shot at the Raw Tag Team titles.
But then, Alpha Academy had something to say about that, which essentially turned this into a triple threat match.
The match that we have booked right now.
Now, after the Royal Rumble, this is going on to the next match. After the Royal Rumble, Edge would disappear for a couple of weeks.
He would.
Before making his return on the February 21st episode of Raw, in which he would lay down an open challenge to anyone at WrestleMania.
And he literally meant anyone.
The following week, that challenge would be accepted by AJ Styles.
Which would make things very interesting.
On the same night, the biggest surprise would happen when, for the first time since 2010, now granted at this point he hadn't been in the ring for 9 years, so it probably would have happened if he had been forced into retirement. But for the first time since 2010, Edge would go heel.
Yes, by attacking AJ Styles.
With not one but two competitors.
Ouch.
Which would have Styles out for a while, and Edge would change his look and entrance music.
Much to my colleagues' disgust.
Also, during this build, we will bring back up a Seth Rollins for a moment. Because one of Seth Rollins' attempts to get a WrestleMania match featured facing AJ Styles, and if Seth won, he would replace Styles in this match. Which would have been, I want to say, okay because of their little rivalry last year, but that was put to bed already.
It was.
However, Edge decided that wasn't going to happen by interrupting the match with a steel chair shot.
Ouch.
This next match is Randy Orton's stick because he came out of nowhere.
Yes, between the unstoppable Omos and a now face Bobby Lashley.
Now, Bobby Lashley, who, with a little bit of help from Paul Heyman and Roman Reigns, became WWE Champion for the second time at the Royal Rumble. But he hadn't done anything active since then, and was essentially removed from the Elimination Chamber match in Saudi Arabia. It was then revealed that he'd been dealing with a shoulder injury, I believe it was, since the Rumble, and was supposedly going to be out for a couple of months. However, they have now cleared Lashley for an in-ring return, and this match, I honestly don't know what's going to happen, because yes, Lashley's been built up strong for the better part of the year. However, they also appear to want to build on this.
And what do you do here then, since they're back this other corner?
Well, you can look strong in defeat as long as it's booked right.
True. And now we move on to the match what we suspect will probably main event night 2.
There's no doubt that this match will main event night 2. And this goes all the way back to 2015, technically, because for the third time, Brock Lesnar
Oh, Jesus.
will face Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. Let's give a bit of a history lesson with these two, and then we'll get on to this match.
Okay.
So, Roman Reigns would win the 2015 Royal Rumble match, which would set up their first encounter of WrestleMania, which was then gate-crossed by the heist of a century when Seth Rollins would cash in Money in the Bank.
Yep, correct.
Their second encounter of WrestleMania was WrestleMania 34 in the Superdome.
Jesus, okay, I thought you could...
In which, I mean, was one of the, technically bad match because Roman Reigns would kick out 5 F5s?
Yep, something like that.
And then they would have a few more matches. They've had a few more matches, like one in Saudi Arabia, one at actually 2 in Saudi Arabia if you include this past October. And one at SummerSlam. This whole thing literally was really placed. We kind of knew what was going to happen. At SummerSlam, when Brock Lesnar came back after Roman Reigns' win over John Cena. So they had their first real encounter at Crown Jewel when Lesnar was smacked with the Universal Championship. They were supposed to face off for day one, but Roman Reigns would test positive for COVID, so then he was inserted in the WWE Championship match and won that. And then, because at this point, Roman Reigns had fired Paul Heyman. But we go into a situation where that changed at the Royal Rumble when Heyman cost Lesnar the WWE Championship to Lesnar. Lesnar then won the title back at the Elimination Chamber. Actually, before that, he would win the Royal Rumble and win the WWE Championship back, setting this up as a title unification match. Because this is now WWE Champion Brock Lesnar versus Universal Champion Roman Reigns. Will it be Lesnar 2 belts or Reigns 2 belts?
Time will tell on Sunday on April 3rd.
So, as we quickly go through the matches again, on night 1, Becky Lynch will take on Bianca Belair for the Raw Women's Championship.
The Mysterios will take on The Miz and Logan Paul.
Drew McIntyre will take on Happy Corbin.
Usos will defend their SmackDown Tag Team titles against Nakamura and Boogs.
The New Day will take on Sheamus and Rude Holland.
Seth Freakin' Rollins will take on a to-be-announced opponent in a one-on-ones match.
Charlotte Flair defends the SmackDown Women's Championship against Ronda Rousey.
On night 2, Queen Selina and Carmella will defend their women's tag team titles against Banks and Naomi, Ripley and Morgan, Natalya and Baszler.
Johnny Knoxville versus Sami Zayn in Anything Goes.
Pat McAfee will take on Austin Theory.
RK Bro defend the Raw Tag Team titles against the Street Profits and Alpha Academy.
Edge will take on AJ Styles.
Bobby Lashley will take on Almost.
And Brock Lesnar will take on Roman Reigns in a winner-takes-all to unify both titles.
All that's left to say is enjoy Wrestlemania.